Welcome to Financial Revelations. I am David Safransky, your host. Every week you can catch me on Twitter. My handle is @skibucks and the number 1. You can also email questions, comments, concerns, anything that you want to do to Joshua at EPSF.com. Joshua at EPSF.com. And, you know, I've never done this before, but you can actually call here. You could call the office. And on a great day, you probably even get a hold of me. Or if it's a question for the podcast, you can get a hold of Josh. 1-800-344-2534. 1-800-344-2534. And every Thursday morning, without fail, except tomorrow, I'm going to be on WCRF 103.3, Thursday mornings, 0800. That's 8 a.m. for you civilians. And I'm on for an hour. So we take calls, we take questions. A lot of people text in questions. It's strange. A lot of people, well, it's not strange. It's just human nature, I guess. But a lot of people don't like they get nervous when they go on the radio. You don't have to be nervous. You just don't have to be. Get your questions answered. Use it as a resource. That's what it's there for. And we do really help a lot of people. So it's being on the radio has really been a great thing for me in that I originally started it because there was somebody out in my area who was stealing from people, and people didn't really have anybody to talk to about it. They didn't have anywhere they could go and not have somebody with skin in the game. So I'm a person that has no skin in the game. I will help you however I can, steer you in the right direction, maybe even keep you from getting ripped off, or help you invest wisely. And you don't have to do it with us. There's no commitment on your part if you call here or anything like that. I just want to make sure you're getting directed in the right way. I don't have to benefit off of everything. I'm doing okay, so you don't have to worry about me. So, hey, inflation's really high. I mean, really high, 40-year highs. The consumer price index came out high last week. The Fed raised 0.75 points. The producer price index came out hot. Remember, the producer price index is kind of foreshadowing for the next consumer price index. So if the PPI, the producer price index, is hot this month, the CPI, the consumer price index, probably going to be hot next month. The Fed is already floating a 1% interest rate hike in July. That's a big deal. That doesn't happen a lot. I do think now that the Fed is probably going to push us into a mild recession to bring down prices. And remember, if inflation were to get high and then stop, so prices are high and then they stop right there and they don't increase from there, inflation's at zero. But that's why you have to look year over year, because the 1 month number, yeah, it's good, especially if things are going down or going up. But if it's just at zero, that's not helping us at all. Gas is expensive. Everything's expensive. So I wanted to give you kind of my guide, my 6 tips on how to survive inflation. So this is a guide on how to survive inflation in these times right now. And I think it's going to be high for a little bit longer than what we had hoped. It's not transitory whatsoever. And it's going to be higher than what we had hoped. So not only is it going to be high for longer, it's going to be higher than what we thought for longer also, because nothing is bringing down fuel prices. And until fuel prices come down, inflation isn't coming down. I don't care what anybody says. This is pretty basic math here. You don't need to be an economics PhD to know this. So the first thing I want you to do, my first thing that I think is really important when we're in inflationary times is you have to maintain your emergency fund. So everybody should have an emergency fund, especially if you're investing, if you own a house, if you have kids, if you're breathing, you should have an emergency fund. I think I covered everybody that would be listening anyway. So don't go into your emergency fund for non-necessities. So like a highly tailored jacket with fabric from London, not a necessity for me. I love it, not a necessity. I'm not going to go into my emergency fund for that. This is your safety net if things get worse. And I hate to say it, I think things are going to get worse. It's the beginning of any solid budget is an emergency fund. You see, when you have an emergency fund, you have a place to go if your job ends, if there's an unexpected bill, your transmission falls out, your kid breaks her arm, whatever it is. That's what your emergency fund is for. And you need to have that to be good at a lot of other things. Now, notice I said it's the beginning of any solid budget because it allows you, one, to plan longer term. It allows you to be a good investor because if the market's down and you need money, you don't have to come to me. When the market's down, you go to your emergency fund if the transmission falls out. So it allows you to be a better investor, but it's the beginning of any solid budget. That assumes something, that you have a budget. You've got to have a budget. Go back and give your budget a second look. Just look at it. See what's in there that you can cut back on. I think we're going to be in a time now. I don't want to scare people. You don't need to go dig a bunker. You don't need to fill it with consumables yet. I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's where we're at. So this is not fear-mongering. I don't want you to... I'm not selling gold or a newsletter or anything like that, although I probably should be. I'm not because I don't like when people do that. But I want you to go look at that budget and see if there's non-necessities that you can cut out now. I think of my own household. One of the things that I'm going to talk to my wife about, we're about to be confined in a relatively small space together for an extended period of time, and she's not going to be able to avoid me. She's not going to be able to avoid me. I'm going to talk to her about how many streaming services we have. It's crazy how many we have. The people used to cut the cord, but what we did is we kept the cord and we acted like we cut it. So we're gonna cut those non-necessities out. I want you to lower your monthly costs before somebody makes you lower your monthly costs. So we're trying to get ahead of things here. Now, again, if you don't have a budget, let's say you're like, well, yeah, we kind of know what we spend, we feel pretty good about it. That's not a budget. There's no need to beat yourself up. We're not here to tell you about all the things you're doing wrong. What I want to do is I want to help you do things right, and it is a total different attitude. I could be the get off my lawn guy, but that isn't going to help you. It's not going to help me. What I want to do is I want to encourage you. I want to give you a reason to want to do these things because they're in your best interest, and that's what we want to do here. So what I need you to do, if you don't have a budget, is I need you to get to work, and I need you to get a budget. Now, what is a budget? Half of it's really easy because it's the money that you make. So it's our intake. It's what we're making. It's our paychecks. We know that. You subtract out your deductions, your 401k, and things like that. And then the other side of it is your costs. Now, a lot of those costs we know intimately. It's our house payment or car payment. Could be your electricity, your natural gas bill, all those things. And then there's always a bunch of things in there that we have that we spend every month that we don't really track. It's the dinners out, it's the entertainment. It's we don't do that very often, but well, if you're doing it, write it in the budget. I'm not saying don't do it, just know what it is. And that's really your budget. People always ask me, what's the best technology? What's the best app, or what's the best this or that to work my budget? And I always say the best one that you could use is the one that you'll use. So if it's a yellow pad, use the yellow pad. If it's Mint, use Mint. There's so many budgeting apps. There's some that will balance your checkbook for you. I don't like that. I want to do that. And let me tell you why. Because when it's doing it for you, you get detached from finances. And one of the things that we see a lot with our athletes and entertainers is if they have somebody else paying their bills, they get detached from their finances very quickly. And they're not. It's not that they're not smart. They are smart. They're just paying attention to other things. So that's where a lot of people make financial mistakes, is when they get detached. So I want you doing those things. You do it. So number 3, I want you to be linear in your transportation. I don't know if you've noticed this, but gas is really expensive. I went to fill up my truck today and I accidentally filled it up with premium gas. I don't hit the button. I didn't notice until I was done. $147 later, I'm like, oh my gosh. So how do you be linear with your transportation? And what I really am talking about here is, you know, when you're driving around in a day and you feel like a ping pong ball, you're just going back and forth, back and forth. I'm running here, running there. Oh, I forgot this. I want you to plan your day. I know this sounds silly and it sounds simplistic, but it will actually work. So like, if your kids have to wait somewhere, too bad, because you're not going there right now to go back over. So you're going to be linear, almost like running a circle. So at the end of the day, you're back home. And if your kids have to wait someplace, just say, hey, listen, suck it up, Buttercup. This is what we're doing. Gas is expensive, and I don't want to spend money I don't have to spend. The other thing that I've seen a lot of people do, especially in other times like this, is they carpool kids with other parents. They kind of join forces. You know, when I was growing up, there's like 50 kids in my neighborhood, and we all played every day, and whatever ball we had, that's the game that we were playing. But when we were playing organized sports, there was a lot of teamwork going on there between moms and dads. So don't be afraid to do that. Team up with other people in the neighborhood, but try and cut your driving down, because I think gas is going higher. It may not be $6 by 4th of July, but it's going to be higher. The administration is not doing anything meaningful to make gas prices go lower. And a gas tax holiday is not going to do it. It's a Band-Aid. It's silly. It doesn't do anything to increase oil supply, and it's not going to help. Right now they're trying political things where we really have a systemic problem that they caused, and they're trying to get out of it now in some way without drilling oil. We're begging the Saudis and the Venezuelans, come on. We're begging the Venezuelans to pump oil. We should be ashamed of ourselves. Number 4, shop in bulk if you can. Be a coupon warrior. I hate coupons. My father-in-law once said, Dave, isn't it true that you never shop for a sale? You never look for a sale? I'm like, well, maybe, but I do now. And so there is some value in buying in bulk and buying in advance, because let's say you know your kids eat oatmeal every day. Buy oatmeal when it's cheap. Buy it in bulk. And this way you could get in front of maybe a price hike that's coming in 2 months, because you have enough. Now you're going to have to store things and kind of ration it out a little bit to your kids, because you know what happens with kids. They see a box of cereal and it's like, oh, I'm going to have 9 bowls. Well, okay, within reason, kid. So shop in bulk if you can, maybe even team up with other people in the neighborhood. It really will help. Number 5 to beat inflation is don't raid the retirement plan. Look, this is why you got to have a budget. This is why you got to have an emergency fund, so you know where you can go if things do get dramatically tougher. If the Fed overshoots their number and we hit a really hard landing, the only time you raid your retirement plan is to avoid bankruptcy. That's it. No other time. Now, your daughter's getting married, find a way. Get a home equity line. Those are getting more expensive. As of this morning, mortgage rates were north of 6%, 30-year fixed. If the Fed raises a full point, and they may, I don't really have an opinion on it yet. I need to see some data, but they're floating it out there. It is a possibility. Mortgage rates could be north of 7%. That's going to slow down the housing market fairly substantially. And the sixth thing I want you to remember and do and think about on my How to Survive Inflation guide is remember 2008. Now, I don't want to scare anybody. I'm not selling gold. I'm not selling a newsletter. There's no financial incentive in this for me, and I know this isn't 2008, but it feels like we're getting there. And that feeling is not good. And some of the lessons on cutting back in 2008 could really apply now. And one of the things that I learned in 2008 is don't wait till you have to cut back, because now you're out of choices. Now somebody's going to tell you what you got to cut back on. You decide. And so I'll give you one simple example. When in 2008, there's a coffee shop right by my office, and I would go there every day, and I'd get a $6.50 latte. 2008 hits, and I'm like, what am I doing? I could go to Costco, which is also right by my office, and get a 2.5 pound bag of Starbucks coffee for $17 and make all the cups of coffee I wanted. I don't got to pay $6.50. It was dumb. So I don't do that. Now, I'll be in airports coming up, so I'll be getting a Starbucks, and I always tell them my name is Armando because when I was in Miami one time, they said, latte for Dave, and 14 people stood up. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen again. So now I'm Armando to coffee shops, and whenever I put in a reservation at a restaurant or anything like that, my name's Armando. It's not a lie because they don't say, what's your name? They say, can I have a name for the order? So I just give them Armando. But in 2008, I cut that back. I never went back to doing it on a daily basis. And we should be thinking that way. I think things are going to get a little bit tighter for a little bit longer, and then inflation probably will settle down. The Fed is having an effect. Housing market's already starting to slow down. I wouldn't say dramatically, but it's slowing down. Remember, after 2008, we underbuilt houses. And in 2020, we built no houses. People are still moving, and they're moving out of houses, and they're moving out of apartments, and kids are graduating from college, and they want to buy houses. So we need it. I think because we have a demand in the housing market could stay healthy a little bit longer than what we thought. And I think that's probably what we're seeing right now. But if the 30-year fix goes to 7%, the housing market's going to slow down and get very cold. And houses will sit on the market for a long time. I'm already seeing houses sit on the market for a long time. And if your house, 4 months ago, if your house didn't sell in the first week, something's dramatically wrong. Now, I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think houses are going to sit longer. Listen, I want you to survive this inflation. It's not going to be easy for a lot of people, especially if you're lower income or middle class income, lower end of that socioeconomic scale. We're going to really have to be deliberate. We're going to have to force ourselves to make some choices because costs are rising so fast. Now, as they start to slow down, you could take these lessons that we've learned and the cash that you've saved and the new habits that you've built, and you can kind of transition that into more savings, because when we take things away from ourselves that we don't necessarily need, sometimes we don't go back to them. And now we've got some extra cash that we could save for the future or do some planning with, and that's what I want you to be doing. I want you to be smart with your money. I want you to survive the Biden economy, which is going to be tough. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be tough. But we could do it. There's hope on the horizon. The midterms, the Republicans are going to win. I don't put my faith in politicians, but the market does love divided government. And not a lot gets done. And the best thing that politicians could generally do is absolutely nothing, because most of their decisions are not really that solid. I'm David Safransky. This is Financial Revelations, and I will see you soon.